amazing.
Yeah.
I read this incredible description of why dog scent and sense of smell is so much better than ours. There's a guy named Noam Sobel who's been on my podcast. He's over in Israel, who claims that human olfaction is just as good as dog olfaction. But how do they outdo us? The frequency of sniffs, and this is really cool. You know those little notches on the side of the nose? Like our nostrils look more or less symmetric. They have those little notches. They create little vortices for the dog so that the scents stick around. They're actually getting longer exposure to a scent. So when they're getting something like 10 or 20x the exposure to the scent in the olfactory bulb, and are able to assess both directionality. They can do right nostril, left nostril. They can sense odor plumes to steer in one direction or another. But Noam has done these crazy experiments when he was back at Berkeley, where he had people's hands mitted, eyes covered, so they can't sense touch, they can't see, everything's covered, and they can follow a scent of chocolate buried 7 inches below the ground. So he insists that this thing that you see in all the textbooks, which is that humans have, like 1/1000th or something of the number of olfactory receptors. That's total bullshit.
Really?
Total bullshit. And in fact, our friend, who by the way wanted me to say hello, Rick Rubin, turned to a good friend of mine who's the chair of neurosurgery of a major medical school department, not Stanford, I promise, and said, what percentage of the things in medical textbooks, okay, this is Rick asking this chair of neurosurgery, okay, what percentage of things that you find in medical textbooks, basic and advanced, do you think are false based on your understanding of what we actually know now compared to when the textbooks were written? And he said 50%. And then Rick said, and then Rick said, I know, I was wide-eyed too. And then Rick said, and what is the extent of impact on treatment of patients modern day? And his answer was one word: incalculable.
Oh my God. 50%
50% in currently used medical textbooks, meaning that the literature has been updated with new understanding, new scientific papers, but it has not yet been incorporated into the medical education.
But let me say something, because I know that bears have insane senses of smell that are many times stronger than a bloodhound's, and famously can smell people from 100, 200 yards away. Like, there's got to be levels to it. And I just can't imagine that a bloodhound doesn't have a better sense of smell than a person.
Right. So they absolutely have a better sense of smell in under the definition that they use it. As you move that forward, you can see detail. Okay. So, and that's because the density of pixels, so to speak, in the retina is much, much higher near the fovea, near the center, than it is at the periphery. Okay. So what he's saying, what Noam Sobel's laboratory has found and others have found, is that the number of pixels, the potential for olfactory resolution in humans and in bloodhounds is essentially the same. This is his argument. But that bloodhounds sniff much more. In fact, and here's, now I'm recalling the experiment that led to this conclusion that humans have exceptional olfaction, which is that there's a particular compound that when introduced to a swimming pool, people can detect a difference in the smell of the water at a dilution that is outrageously small.
Like skunk spray.
Like skunk spray. Forgive me because I'm not remembering the name of the chemical, but he said you can essentially add a drop of this to a swimming pool, and then people can smell the difference between the water. And so his argument is not that humans are walking around sensing all these smells consciously as well as a bloodhound or as well as a bear, but that we have a tremendous capacity for olfaction that, that the chocolate tracking experiment exemplifies, but it requires some removal of our most dominant sense, vision, and hearing, our second most dominant sense. And in that case, tactile orientation as well. And so the idea is that, we have an amazing olfactory apparatus. In fact, he makes the argument, and there's evidence for the fact that as soon as people meet, and they've done these beautiful experiments, people meet, they shake hands, and the next thing they do, they tend to, within about a minute, they wipe the scent of the other person on their face typically. I guess I wasn't paying attention.
And they don't realize it?
People don't realize this. And
they just do it subconsciously?
Yeah.
I bet that's in your mind. I bet you don't like them anymore. Because if you're really in love with someone, you don't even care if they have bad breath. You still want to kiss them.
That's true, too.
Because you just love them. You don't care.
That's true, too.
Yeah.
That's true, too.
Yeah, you don't care if they smell. You don't care. You love them. But if they're gross and then they smell, you're like, ugh.
Right.
You fucking stinky asshole. This is a mule deer skull. So, this is not as extreme as an elk, but you get a look at the internal.
Okay.
If you look inside of that and you see,
Oh yeah.
because they can wind you from 100